Welcome to the Centric Behavioral Health Podcast, where we talk all things mental health and substance abuse. If you or a loved one is struggling with mental health or substance abuse issues, please call our caring team now at 866-271-8480. Again, that number is 866-271-8480. To start your healing journey today, this podcast shares recovery journeys and mental health discussions. If you find this content uncomfortable, please feel free to click away and take a breather. Our goal is to share our experiences and let you know that you are not alone. I think first of all, hi Benzi, welcome to the podcast. This is our third ever podcast that we're doing here for the Centric podcast, so I'm really excited to have you here.
And I'm really happy to be on the podcast.
That's awesome. So can you tell a little bit about yourself? What do you do here at Centric?
So what I do at Centric, I'm one of the admissions coordinators, which means when people call in, they're reaching out for help, which is a place that I have been in the past, calling in. So I'm able to connect with those people, hear what their feelings are, see what they're going through, and hopefully point them to the right direction and make sure they get the right type of help that they needed.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, like everyone in the admin team is like super nice. Like you're always answering the phones, you're always even following up with people and like alumni. Like you do it all.
Yeah, and I think it's like also like a family. We work together. We all know a lot about these people that are going through because a lot of us talk to them on different like points of when they're going through or when they're in treatment. So we know a lot about them, and we try to share our experience. Should I look at the camera or not?
Yeah, you can definitely look into the camera. I mean, if not, or just look at me because again, we're having like a conversation.
Right. Okay.
So anyways, I think to get to like today's topic is all about the turning points that changed our lives. So Benzi, you have a story, right?
I do.
And I'm here to ask firstly, can you give us a little backstory on how we got here?
Okay, it's how I got here or how I got there, like to begin with.
Sorry, to get the question going, I guess is how did it start with your story, specifically with substance abuse?
Okay, so I think this is as much as I understand it. There's probably a lot more to it, but I think my addiction is basically I never felt like I fit in. This is like, I know you hear this a lot from a lot of people, and I think it is a lot of people's story. Never thought that I fit in, never, I was very anxious all the time. I was probably depressed a lot as well. I mean, I remember being anxious as long as I remember being a kid.
Okay, so this started like early childhood.
Very early childhood. I was also nervous because I stuttered a lot. So I remember just having that feeling anytime before I talked to anybody or try telling somebody something. I didn't even know that it was anxiety, but that's the first of my feelings that I can remember was being anxious and not wanting to tell people what I wanted to say or not wanting to tell a story ever because I already with my head I knew I was gonna stutter kind of. That went away at some point, my stuttering. It just it wasn't through therapy or something.
It just kind of ended on its own.
I think I just calmed down a little bit at some point, or it kind of ended on its own.
And so with this like anxiety, with all of this like kind of mental health issues, where did it start from just kind of going about it to then transitioning to we're going into drugs and alcohol?
So there's not like a specific, like, I don't remember my first drink. I don't remember my first time getting high. I just know like what the feeling was when I started by drinking.
Okay.
I just know that a night that I would go out and drink, I had a good time. I felt like part of the people. I felt like part of a group. I felt as confident as I've probably never felt before that. So it was just like having a good time was just whenever I drank. And then I tried drugs, and it was the same thing. It was me having a good time, me being part of the whatever group I was hanging out with, and that was just the feeling that came with it.
Okay.
And it started by, I always had this thing. I know a lot of people probably do. Like, I wasn't gonna use downers. I wasn't gonna use this drug. Like, it was always in my head. Like, drinking. What is wrong with drinking? A lot of people drink. You know. Then weed. So many people smoke weed or whatever. But when it comes to like hard drugs and stuff like that, I was never gonna do it. Like, I wasn't gonna try it. And at some point, like, I wasn't gonna try or do became my reality that I did, and I felt good while doing it, and I just felt different than all my life growing up, pretty much.
So the transition from the thinking of like, I'm just gonna do drugs and alcohol, or I'm just gonna do weed and alcohol, and I'm just gonna have fun with my friends and all this kind of stuff. So at what point was that transition from like just that to I'm doing heavy drugs now?
So I think the me thinking like I'm never gonna do, me saying I was never gonna do drugs or whatever. I think the first time I broke it was when it came to cocaine, right? So I was like, alcohol, weed, that's okay. People do it. My friends do it. My family drank on occasions. It was okay. Weed, okay, it was okay too to me. I was very like I was brought up the right way. I think don't do drugs. It's gonna ruin your life, and I believed it.
Yeah.
So I wasn't gonna do that. But when I said like weed, alcohol is okay, but cocaine never. Once I did the cocaine, I feel like it's the first time that I broke what I thought, like that I was never gonna do cocaine. So when it came to trying the next drug, which was, I don't know, Molly or something, ecstasy, whatever, it was easier than making a decision to try cocaine.
So it was as soon as the cocaine kind of entered your system, that was when you're breaking your code of like
Yeah,
this, and now you're moving to now the world is endless possibilities are open to
correct.
you,
And
basically.
and I think it was also part of it was like I did cocaine. It was in my head then. It was awesome. It was like, if I thought alcohol was fun or made me feel a certain way, if I thought weed was fun, maybe cocaine was the next level. It was like, ooh, I can feel even better. So when it came next to the next drug or whatever, it didn't take too much thinking about it. It was like, like just asking people who've done it or my friends at that point, like, what is the feeling of that? Like, what would it get me? Like, what type of feeling? They explained it to me and it made sense. And I was like, yeah, let me try this. But I still had this thing that I was never going to do heroin or I was never going to do meth, Yeah. At some point, like, I think I was an addiction for it, like heavy addicted, drinking every day, doing cocaine. Adderall was part of the story too. I think I was 4 or 5 years into addiction. I had a lot of friends that did heroin and did other drugs that I wasn't gonna do, and I just kept that way for a while.
So would you say that like being in this friend group, being like now that you're accepted, you're feeling good, you're taking these drugs, um, my first question is like, would you say it's the friend group for sure that kind of fueled that addiction, or was it yourself kind of, wanting the acceptance?
It was the acceptance. The acceptance was part of it, but it was more me feeling okay while I was doing it.
You
The
felt the
feeling that I
the
got,
euphoria.
just the actually correct, the feeling, the not being anxious, the being able to just, I don't know. It wasn't so much getting approval from my friends, even though I wanted that a lot, like being part of, fitting in, being whichever, just being part of. But it was just a feeling that I felt okay when I was doing it. It was like, even me hanging out with my friends, like, I was the one, like, I have a lot of friends that were doing at that point drugs. Yeah, a lot of them are not addictive or not addicted. They still go on with their life. They just grew up kind of using party drugs, especially cocaine, Molly, and things like that. I was always the one that would, if I liked something, I like cocaine, I would do the most of it. Like, it wasn't just like I'll try it a little bit, chill with it. It was like, this feels good. This feels something like I didn't feel. This doesn't feel like any other days without the drugs, like the feeling that I get. And I was like, if some of it feels good, imagine more of it.
This is my shit right here, kind of a feeling.
Imagine more of it. And it was
Yeah.
like, I think also part of it is probably addictive personality. You know, like if I like some type of food, yeah, I'll eat it very often. I'll be like, yeah, like it's just something that I like the most, kind of. So like even food till today, there's some I like the most, and I'll go to it most often. Like try like eat that food.
So at what point, and so there goes to the transition, is like, at what point would you say this is like, oh my gosh, like, look at where I'm at, that instant, because like some with some addicts, it's almost like you have to get to a certain point to realize I have a problem. What was that for you?
Very late on in my journey to recovery, because I have been so I've been to treatment quite a few times for addiction, like a lot of times actually. And part of my treatment journey in addiction wasn't me trying to get good, or wasn't me realizing that I have this problem, or even if I realized it, I think it was more I didn't believe there's something else for me, that I can actually do okay and feel okay on a daily basis, or just feel okay with myself without drugs. I didn't believe that exists. You know, like you told me this person recovered, or all these stories was like, in my head, it was like they didn't feel like me since I was like 6 or 7 years old. They didn't start their life that way. The anxiousness, this, like whatever was my excuses, I did not believe. Like I literally didn't believe that I can live without drugs. It was like I used to like. It was so stupid that I would say at some point, like, I'll rather live another 4 years but feeling okay than try to live for 80 years the way I felt without drugs.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like literally that. At some point, it was like me being okay with. I'm not gonna survive too long with drugs
You've
because
accepted your fate at that point.
because I overdosed a few times. I was literally dead a few times. Had to be saved. Narcan. Um, so it was like literally like I'll rather at least live what I live and be okay on a day-to-day basis, even though I wasn't okay. Like I wasn't. It was just I wasn't feeling without drugs. I couldn't do anything. I wasn't feeling alright. But it was at least the times that I was high that I felt less. Um, I guess as I felt before doing the drugs. But back to the question. So my first time I went to treatment was I have a love. My parents love me. We have a very big family. They wanted me to go to treatment forever. They brought up the idea of treatment. I think I was 26 at that point. You know, they brought it up all the time, and I just pushed it off. I didn't even know what treatment was because whatever. I had friends that went to treatment. They all came back and started using again or whatever, and they were like, "Yeah, you don't want to go there. We're gonna be locked up or whatever." All these bad ideas about treatment. So I was like, "I'm never going to treatment." Until one time I overdosed, and my mom had to call the police to find out where I was. And I was in the hospital already in a coma for 3 days when my family found me. You know, I had pictures that they took just to show me they were hoping I was gonna, not die, so they can show me the pictures or whatever. Or they just took the pictures to have it because it was, I don't know, whatever. But
a blackmail of some sorts, I guess.
correct, but no, but they were very loving. So when I came out of a coma in the hospital, my mom and my dad was just sitting there. Literally, my mom was crying, and she was like, "Benzi, you gotta go to treatment or do something. We can't go through this again." And I still wasn't that open-minded for the idea to go to treatment.
Wow.
I was in the hospital for another couple of days, just recovering from my coma, and slowly, I was like, you know what? Maybe I should go to treatment. But it wasn't me like thinking it was gonna work, or me thinking I was gonna be better now or whatever. It was just me going to treatment, I guess.
So you said that you've gone multiple times to treatment, like you were kind of in and out, in and out. What was like the last experience for you?
My last experience was Prevail Recovery Center, which I love that place. It For me, it changed my life in a way that I didn't imagine, because I didn't believe like I can live not high or sober. So when it changed was when I started believing it's possible. That's literally what changed in my life at some point.
What was that like? I believe now. Like, what was that point in your life? If you can like kind of paint that picture.
It was that a big part of it was other people believing for me when I didn't
Mm.
believe.
Mm.
They believed that I can live a life. They tried. They told me their stories, and a lot was the same as my story. A lot of them, and it was staff at Prevail. It was the therapists at Prevail, the owners at Prevail. All these people just telling me that they had the same story, and they did. Like a lot of them went through treatment or all that kind of stuff. And it was other people believing for me when I couldn't. And and it was still a rocky road for me in the beginning, but ultimately I decided to really work hard at this.
That's awesome because I know that the last episode that we had here, I had Janet with me. We were talking all things support systems. So I guess I'll ask you that question now because it seems like, what really supported you through that or that change that really like got you from, wanting to take all these drugs and alcohol to every single day to then, living your now sober life. What does a support system mean to you?
Well, based on what we just spoke about, it's probably the biggest thing for me in my life. It was the biggest thing at that point for sure, and it still is. It's just people believing in me. People, it's kind of like when I didn't believe for myself, somebody else did, and somebody else showed me that they believe. Somebody else really got through to me and showed me that they believe and it can happen. And it's like, so it was probably one of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing in my life. It was people believing in me.
And that's awesome. And it's really
Yeah.
powerful. I mean, like, um, it is kind of crazy, hearing a lot of these stories of people who have gone, I mean, to jail, have done hard drugs, all of these different things. Coming from that and then becoming the person that you are now. How does it feel now that you live a sober life? Like, how do you feel now that you feel like you don't need to do these things? You feel like you have the tools, you have the support system. How are you now?
So there's two parts to that too. It's also what I was able to achieve while in this short period of sobriety that I have, or while in sobriety. The thing that I have achieved, I just look back at that and I'm like, I don't like this is a lot more than I ever thought I will be able to do, or it's just a lot more than I imagined ever. And it's a lot that has happened, and it's also I don't remember the question exactly, but
Yeah, just how do you feel now, because like you're saying, like you are accomplishing so much more. Do you think you would have been able to do that back then?
no. And it's like also it's so amazing. This is to me one of the biggest things. It's when you start believing something. I talk about myself. When I started believing something, that was one of the biggest difference in my life. Just believing. I think like the last time I dreamed about something or had any goals or whatever, that was non-existing while I was in addiction. It was the opposite. I said I'm not going to do this. I ended up doing that. I'm not going to try this drug. I ended up trying it. It was the opposite. My word didn't mean anything. My dreams was non-existing. It was like at some point, like I said, I was okay with just living 4 years or whatever I was gonna live. I got to a point at some point that I knew for a fact. I didn't know for a fact, but I was okay that I wasn't gonna live till my 30s or at least 35. I was kind of like because there's so many consequences that comes with the addiction. That I let go or whatever. That I was okay with it because I'm not gonna live anyways too long, kind of, and and it kind of like so just when I started believing, it's so amazing what that can change in a person.
Yeah.
What that changed for me,
Absolutely. And
just
it starts
believing.
with you because I think that, a lot of people will say like, oh, you got to do it. Like as a support system, we want to support and we want to tell you, believe in yourself, do all this kind of stuff. But it doesn't start with just one person saying it. It's you doing it for yourself.
Mhm.
And so,
And that's today too. Like when I talk to people that call in or whatever, the one thing I want to give them or I want to assure them or somehow get through to them is belief that there is help, and life doesn't have to be this way, especially when it comes to addiction. That there's millions of people that are in recovery, and I didn't believe that. I didn't buy that they were actually in recovery. I was like, maybe they're holding their breath for a little bit, feeling as I felt before, or like going back to the old thing. But it's not. It's not. There is actually hope, and there's a lot of help, and that's what I want to get through to people today. When I talk about addiction, when I talk about any of the stuff that I went through, is just believing. I have friends that call me sometimes, that are back from Brooklyn, from where I'm from. They call me, they talk about they're in addiction or whatever. I just always want to be the person on the phone that is like, I'll share my story. I'll not in like a cocky way, just that there is help, and it doesn't have to be this way anymore. If you don't want it, if you want to whatever, it doesn't have to be that way.
That's wonderful. And I mean, that's exactly why, making this podcast, it's essentially just like sharing everyone's stories.
Yeah.
And, there might be someone out there who was and is anxious currently, and you having, that you've gone all through this and now you're on the other side.
Yeah.
And, it's really powerful. I think telling your story is super powerful.
Yeah.
And you never know what may affect the other person on the
Who
other
will listen
side.
and who will connect? Like
Exactly.
because everybody's story is different, but a lot is the same. It's just like, for me, it was like, I've heard it so many times and never understood it, or did, but never like there's that the opposite of addiction is abundance. It's being part of, or whatever. That's the opposite of addiction, kind of, and that's what I was missing.
That's beautiful.
And while I was before addiction and while in addiction.
So in abundance, of course, like you had your addiction, but now in your abundance, what would you kind of name a few things that is like abundant in your life now?
I have a job that I love, that I go to work and I want to do it. I have my fiance that I'm getting married in January.
Congratulations.
That I love.
Yeah.
I'm a brother to my sisters and brothers and sisters, which I have a lot of them. I have 9.
Wow. That's a lot of brothers and sisters.
Yeah. I'm a brother to them. I was just in Brooklyn not too long ago. The whole family went out. I felt for the first time in a while, I felt like I was part of the family, and I was able to be the brother, just be there without any like, just the feeling was right, kind of. I have a lot of people that I care about and care about me. It's just that's the opposite to me than addiction. Even days that I don't feel the best or whatever, I know there's so much in my life that is worth getting through these moments that I don't feel good, which it wasn't before that. It wasn't while I was in addiction, and it wasn't before I was in addiction. I had no dreams. I didn't believe in anything, and now I have what to fight every day for, even when I don't feel the best.
That's so wonderful. I think that like, having overdosed, having all these terrible things happen to you, do you think that if they didn't happen to you in the sequence that they happened, would you be here sitting with me today?
That's an interesting question. It's like, I think more in the positive parts that happened had to happen for me to be here.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I overdosed 7 different times.
Wow.
And been saved 7 different times. I was in a coma for 6 days at some point.
Wow.
So I don't think if all that had to happen, because at some point when I overdosed, like I didn't even like look at it as something that happened or whatever. I just moved on quicker than anybody else who heard the story, probably. My family who heard that overdose or whatever, they probably had a lot more to deal with than I actually did, and I was the one overdosing. Because when I was saved, or Narcan or saved, my first next thought was like, I gotta get me some heroin.
Wow.
It wasn't even a thought that I just almost died and I was saved. It wasn't even like a gratitude at that point to whoever saved me, or to what happened, or to a higher power. There wasn't even any of that thoughts. It took me being in treatment. It took me being in recovery for like 4 or 5 months maybe even less than that, but at least a couple of months before I started thinking like, damn, I was saved, and like, thank God I was saved, or whatever thoughts came with it. It took me being sober for a while to have that emotions and have that feelings. So I don't know if the back to the question, I don't know if the bad parts had to happen all like that, but I know there had to be other people believing in me before I was gonna believe. There had to be my supportive mom was definitely a part of my story. You know, I remember, this is a story that I remember. My mom came to Florida to visit me. She is from Brooklyn. I grew up in Brooklyn. There was a therapy session. Me and my mom and my one of my brothers and one of my sisters were here. What hit me at that session or that time where they were there, I was just coming off a relapse and overdosing and almost dying. They had to get a call from treatment that I almost died. For me, it didn't like. I probably didn't feel the same way about it because I just
You're
didn't.
going through those motions that you've
Correct.
always been doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my mom just telling my therapist at that point in front of me, in front of my brother and sister, that they're numb to these phone calls. Like my mom, she made a joke, like, you know, like she just hopes that she's after a shower already whenever she gets the phone call, because she knows one of these days it's gonna be to fly out to Florida and just be in my funeral and bury me. Like when she said it like that, and she meant it. Like she actually had this phone call so many times that she actually meant it, and she was kind of like, you know, dealing the way she dealt with this, with the emotions, kind of like it was like she was numb to this, and she was like she didn't want it to happen, but she knew like she had to come peace that this might be one of the next phone calls. You know, that's when it hit me in a certain. That was part of also that hit me and made me want to do this. You know, at that point, if not for me, for my mom, if not for me, for my siblings, I don't want this story to be, you know, my family story to be my story. Part of the family should be that I died of an overdose at the age of, I don't know, 29 or 28. You know, without having done anything here. You know, like I just didn't want it to be part of the story of our families, my part of the family story.
I think it's pretty incredible, like the fact that your mom was just like already kind of going through those motions, and then finally it was when your family showed up for you, and then that was like the moment where you're like, wow, you know.
Yeah. And part of that visit was actually to like see me for one more time or whatever.
They
Like
were
just
ready to give up.
they weren't giving up, but
No.
they like accepted the fact that I'm doing a drug and I'm doing as much as I want to, or as much as the more I can do on a daily basis because of my way I feel. It's a drug that has killed a lot of my friends that they knew. So it was like, you know, the same way it happened to my friend one day. You know, my mom was friends with one of my friend's dad because they connected in the way that they both had a kid, an addict that they both loved and couldn't do anything. You know, and he died at some point. I remember my mom talking to me about it while I was in addiction. I didn't care at that point, but just like she was there for that guy so much, like running to the hospital when he was in the hospital after overdosing before dying, and she tried to do the most for that guy, you know, and that guy's family at that point. So it was just like she knew that at some point, if I don't stop doing this, like they like the way we always say it, like there's three ways out of it: jail, death, or getting better. Just staying this way, at some point the drug kills, especially the drug that I was using. If it's not a slow death, I mean, if it's not an overdose and dying, it's a slow death. So she already made peace with that. And I was overdosing that year, I think 3 times in a row, very closely. So she knew that I guess my body was kind of like wasn't able to handle the drugs anymore that I was taking or the amounts I was taking.
Wow.
Just to like in her idea.
I'm just poor mama, but I'm glad that at least like now everything is much different, and thanks to Prevail, it's all the people that have gone through and help you. Now you are on the other side helping other people. So how does it feel now? Being on the other side and speaking to those people. And I know that you kind of mentioned that you share your story, but how does it feel when you really touch someone and that person goes, "Hey," like, has that happened to you? Like, any words?
Yeah, and it's not just if I can give hope for that person, or which is the most important part, because I want that person to have hope and believe in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like it's a big part of it
Mm-hmm.
is to believe. Once you have belief and you try to work and you really want it,
Mm-hmm.
anybody can achieve it.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a person I don't think that can't, if they really have the belief and they're really gonna do whatever it takes to get it. But even a mom of a kid that I can tell them my mom's story, kind of
Yeah.
like in her perspective, like my mom had to make this phone call one day for
Mm-hmm.
me, you know. She doesn't regret it today. And I know it wasn't easy for her to make the phone call either. Just like, my kid is killing himself
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. Just giving that kind of hope to moms, to family members, and to the actually person that's on the phone or needs the help
Mm-hmm.
is probably the best thing.
Yeah, there's never, it's almost like, don't feel like you need to hide it ever. It's always, recovery is 100% possible.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's the point. And that's like I think that I would love everybody to know that
Mm-hmm.
recovery is possible. Because I know my story was that I didn't believe.
Mm-hmm.
And once that changed, is where I think everything changed. I started trying harder. I started listening to other people. I started doing what I was doing, what I
Mm-hmm.
started doing. It's just believing is a very big part. And I want, like, if I can get through one thing on the phone or one thing to a person suffering or a family member,
Mm-hmm.
is if I can get them to believe that it's possible. That's the biggest thing, I think, to me, biggest accomplishment.
Yeah, that's the one that we just need to drive home at the
Hmm.
end of the day. Well, I wanted to ask like everyone, with recovery and all that stuff, because of course, like, taking care of your mental health, taking care of yourself is really important. What's something that you like to do for like self-care?
Mm. I like to meditate, but what is something that I like to do for self care? If I can, I don't have an answer to that question.
Well, like it seems like you love your family, you love being around your family. Is something like that, like being with your like cherished ones, your loved ones? Is that something that's a form of like oh, it like charges your batteries back up?
Yeah, so like what I like to do for self care or what makes me feel the best is when I'm a good son to my mom.
Mm,
I'm a good boyfriend to my fiance.
mm,
I'm a good brother to my brothers and sisters, especially my sisters. Like
mm,
when I can be there for them
mm,
or be the one that answers the phones to them when they call instead of just ignoring them, which I did for so many years.
mm.
If I can just be there and just do what I can do every day
Yeah.
to help people and stuff like that, I think that's the best feeling. Kind of.
Yeah.
It just makes me feel part of, like the feeling that I never had as a kid, or the
Mm,
feeling that I felt the first time while doing drugs. Like I felt I
mm,
was part of. Just being
mm,
part of in life is the best feeling now. And when I do it like in recovery
mm.
with no substances or anything like that, that's the best feeling for sure.
You definitely have a community.
Yeah.
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 And I think the last thing that I could ask you is, and if you wanted to look into the camera for this one, um, what would you say to someone? And I know you've already kind of drilled it in the 100% for recovery, but if you'd like to say something directly into the camera, what would you tell someone who is seeking treatment today?
I would say part of it will be like what I said about believing and that it's doable, it's possible. But what I would love to get to always and say is that you're worth it, and you're worth feeling like calm and like a normal person or whatever is going through. I don't want to say the word normal because that's not what it is.
No one is
Kind
really
of,
normal,
no
I
one is really
guess.
normal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but you want to
but you're
feel.
worth feeling the okay with yourself, and
Mhm.
you're worth fighting for it. And I know there's so many people that care and would love to help, and there's a lot of help there. and I'm just proud of even them calling or reaching out or talking to somebody about what they're going through, and they deserve it. They deserve to get the help.
Awesome. And hey, if you call in to Centric Behavioral Health, Benzi might just be the person to answer your call. So definitely call in. We have fantastic people on board, just like Benzi. He's here to help you. I'm going to leave the phone number down in the description below. I'll even maybe do like a little like editing thing here where it's like this is where the phone number is. But again, thanks so much for sharing your
For
story
sure.
today. And thank you for listening in. And again, if you or someone you love is in need of substance abuse treatment or with mental health, please give us a call and just know that we're here to help you. All right. Bye.
Absolutely.
Thank you.